Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Jason moved into his dream home, far from the grasp of any HOA, he didn't expect a clipboard-wielding neighbor to declare war. But in the sun-scorched suburbs of Arizona, power, control, and obsession can turn a quiet street into a battlefield. I should have known things were going to go sideways the moment a woman in pastel activewear marched across my new front lawn like she was leading a battalion. I hadn't even finished unloading the damn moving truck when she showed up, tight ponytail, clipboard in hand, and a smile so forced it could have cracked porcelain. It was late August, the kind of Arizona afternoon where the pavement shimmers and sweat sticks to you like judgment. I'd just bought the house 2 weeks earlier after a nightmare of bidding wars and inspections, and today was finally move-in day. The place was perfect, old brick, weird angles, and most importantly, not governed by a homeowners association. That was the deal breaker for me. I didn't want anyone telling me what color to paint my door or how long my grass could be. I was halfway through hauling a bookshelf when I heard, "Excuse me, sir." Her voice had the tone of someone who was used to being obeyed, or at least indulged. I turned around, blinking through the sun, and there she was, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "I'm Karen Howard," she announced, like it was supposed to mean something to me. "President of the Clearview Hills Homeowners Association." "Good for you," I said, setting the bookshelf down on the porch. "I'm Jason." "I don't think we're in the same neighborhood." She ignored that. "Before you continue moving in, you'll need to sign this." She held out a clipboard with a packet clipped to it, thick and bristling with pastel-colored tabs. I blinked. "What is it?" "It's a Community Standards Compliance Acknowledgement. Everyone in Clearview is required to sign before taking residence. It confirms you understand our architectural standards, landscaping expectations, noise ordinances." "I'm not in Clearview," I interrupted. "This house isn't in your HOA. I bought it specifically because it's not in any HOA." Her lips twitched. "There's been some confusion. You're still on Brookside Lane, which falls under our jurisdiction. This property is adjacent to HOA boundaries, so naturally we expect it to follow our guidelines. Adjacent isn't the same thing as included," I said, trying to keep my tone civil. "I've got the paperwork, the deed, the title, all of it. This house isn't part of any association." She didn't flinch. "That may be what your realtor told you, but we've had issues with improperly recorded easements before. It's a common oversight. In the meantime, we expect all new residents to comply until the matter is resolved." She slid the clipboard closer to my chest. "You'll need to initial here, and of course, on the last page." I didn't take it. "Look, I appreciate your enthusiasm or whatever this is, but I'm not signing anything. I'm moving in. This house is mine, and I'm not under your HOA." That's when her smile vanished completely. "Mr. Miller, this community has standards. Your presence here affects property values. If you don't comply, the board will have no choice but to pursue enforcement actions." "Enforcement of what?" I asked, genuinely baffled. "You don't govern this house." She squinted at me like I'd said something deeply offensive. "We'll see about that." With that, she spun on her heel and strode back down the driveway, her clipboard flapping like a protest sign. I watched her go, half expecting her to burst into flames in the heat. The next hour passed in a blur of sweat, cardboard, and frustration. I tried to shake off the encounter. Maybe she was just one of those overzealous types who had nothing better to do. I didn't have the energy to care. That night, after the last of the boxes were stacked and my back felt like it had aged 20 years, I stepped out to grab a beer from the cooler still sitting on the porch. That's when I noticed something tucked into the screen door, a folded sheet of paper sealed in plastic. It read, "Final notice. Failure to submit signed acknowledgement of Clearview community standards will result in formal complaint and legal action. Deadline, August 25th. Clearview HOA Compliance Department." There was a signature at the bottom, Karen Howard, underlined twice. I read it 3 times, laughed out loud, and went inside. I pulled out the property survey, county zoning map, and my title insurance binder. There it was in black and white. This property is not subject to any homeowners association or community governance agreement. Satisfied, I scanned everything into a PDF, added a short message, "Please cease communications. My property is not under your authority," and emailed it directly to the contact address listed on the notice. 3 minutes later, I got a reply. "Disputed. Please refer to recorded plat map attached. Further action pending." Karen. I opened the plat map. It was a grainy scan of a 30-year-old survey that didn't include my parcel. Not surprising, since my house was built 5 years ago on a newly subdivided lot. Her evidence was less convincing than a pirate treasure map. I was already drafting a more detailed response when the power cut out. Just for a second, but enough to kill the lights and reset the microwave clock. I looked outside. Every house on the block was still lit. Weird coincidence. Probably. The next morning, I found my mailbox hanging open. Inside was a thick manila envelope labeled Clearview Hills Homeowners Association Architectural Welcome Packet. There was a note paperclipped to the front. "You forgot to pick this up yesterday." The following days turned into a strange kind of suburban Cold War. I kept waiting for things to simmer down. Maybe Karen had gotten the message. Maybe she'd move on to harassing someone else's grass. But instead, it all started to get coordinated. Quietly, but unmistakably. It began with small things. On Tuesday morning, I noticed a beige sedan parked across the street from my driveway. Didn't think much of it until it showed up again on Wednesday. Same car, same spot, engine running. Someone inside just sitting there pretending to scroll on a phone. I waved. They didn't wave back. Thursday, the beige sedan was replaced with a silver crossover, tinted windows, same time slot, 8 to 9 in the morning. I walked outside with a cup of coffee, leaned against my railing, and just stared at the vehicle. After a full minute, it pulled away. Later that afternoon, I spotted someone, mid-50s, clipboard, HOA badge, walking slowly along the sidewalk in front of my house, stopping to take pictures. Of what? I had no idea. My mailbox, the shrubs, a garden hose. It wasn't subtle. I walked down the driveway to say hello, and they power walked off like I had a contagious disease. By Friday, I had received 3 neighbor courtesy notices in the mail. They looked official but weren't postmarked. Just typed letters dropped into my mailbox. One complained that I hadn't installed the approved post-mounted mailbox with bronze accent. Another claimed that my garbage bins were visible from the street for over 8 hours. And a third suggested my moving boxes created an unsightly atmosphere out of character with the community. Each letter ended with the same line: "Please address these matters promptly to maintain harmony and visual cohesion in Clearview Hills." My address wasn't even listed on the HOA rolls. I double-checked the county property records. Again, still no HOA. But it didn't seem to matter. That weekend, I finally met my next-door neighbor, Tom. Late 40s, tan, crew cut, permanent squint. He came over while I was working on a busted irrigation line in the front yard. "You the new guy?" he asked, nodding toward the house. "Yeah, Jason," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Just moved in last week." He gave a slow nod, then glanced over both shoulders. "You meet Karen yet?" I laughed. "Oh yeah," she gave me a welcome packet and threatened legal action before I got the couch off the truck. Tom smirked. "Sounds like Karen, just watch your back." Before I could ask what the hell that meant, he turned and walked off. No elaboration. That night, I noticed something odd when I checked the Nest camera I'd installed above my garage. Around 2 in the morning, a figure walked up to my driveway, paused near the mailbox, then walked away. Hoodie, ball cap. I couldn't make out a face. Nothing stolen, nothing damaged. But whoever it was, they weren't out for a stroll. The next day, I found a brand new flyer taped to my trash bin. Big bold letters. "Is this what we want in our neighborhood?" Underneath was a photo of my front yard, unflattering angle slightly overexposed, taken while I was elbow deep in a box labeled kitchen knives. At the bottom was a red stamp graphic. "Not in compliance." I laughed, but it wasn't funny anymore. Sunday, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. Just a loop, get a feel for things. What I saw made my blood go cold. 6 other houses had matching flyers. But those flyers weren't about me. They were about a broken porch light, a poorly trimmed bush, a trampoline visible from the street, all stamped with the same red "not in compliance." None of these houses looked bad. Just lived in. Not sterile like Karen's place, which looked like a Pottery Barn catalog and smelled like lemon-scented tyranny. When I passed one of the flyer houses, the woman watering her plants saw me and quickly looked away. Another neighbor closed their blinds as I walked by. One guy across the street just stared at me while pretending to water a flower bed that was already soaked. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was a campaign. That night, I went online and found the Clearview Hills Facebook group. It was private, invite only, but their public tagline said it all: protecting our standards, our homes, and our future. I made a burner account and scrolled through the recent posts. Found one from Karen, time-stamped 5 days ago. Reminder, it's up to us to preserve the integrity of Clearview. Newcomers must be educated and guided when they stray from acceptable norms. No exceptions. The eyes of the community are always watching. Creepy as hell. Then came Monday morning. I walked out to find someone had taken sidewalk chalk and written in huge block letters across my driveway. Shame on the rule breaker. My trash bins were knocked over, my recycling rummaged through. I stood there, staring at the mess, heart thudding, wondering what line I had crossed besides daring to live in a house that didn't answer to their suburban inquisition. My phone buzzed with a new email. Subject, compliance follow-up. From Karen Howard, this is your final reminder. If you continue to ignore community standards, further steps will be taken. Sincerely, CH. Further steps? I started making a list, and then I called a lawyer. I'd never hired a lawyer before. I always figured attorneys were something you called when your life was truly falling apart. Divorce, criminal charges, or a business partner skipping town with your startup funds. Not because the president of a glorified neighborhood club was threatening to fine me over mailbox aesthetics and imaginary bylaws. But here I was, sitting in the wood-paneled office of Terry Lee, a real estate and property rights attorney who came highly recommended by a friend of mine who once had to sue a golf course for draining into his yard. Terry was calm, razor-sharp, and seemed absolutely unfazed by the pile of flyers, photos, fake violation letters, and screenshots I dumped on her desk. So, she said, flipping through the stack, "You're not part of the HOA, correct?" "Correct," I said, tapping the highlighted section on my title paperwork. The property was carved out of the adjacent parcel before the Clearview development broke ground. There's nothing in the deed, title, or land use records indicating any HOA attachment, she nodded. And yet they're issuing you compliance demands and threatening legal action. Daily. Her lips twitched upward. Perfect. She spent the next hour walking me through Arizona property law. Apparently, HOA overreach was nothing new. Some of these organizations tried to push presumed jurisdiction over adjacent properties, especially when the boundary lines weren't visually distinct. But legal precedent was on my side, as long as I had the documents to prove it, which I did, in triplicate. "Okay," she said, steepling her fingers. "Step 1, we send a cease and desist to the HOA president. Step 2, we notify the county that your parcel is being targeted with fraudulent community enforcement. Step 3, if this continues, we file for harassment and tortious interference." Tortious what now? "Interference with the peaceful enjoyment of property," she said, sipping her coffee. Translation: they're messing with your life without cause. Judges hate that. I left her office with a weird cocktail of relief and residual fury swirling in my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. They were crossing the line, legally, aggressively. That afternoon, Terry's office sent an official legal notice to the Clearview Hills HOA. It was delicious, terse, professional, and absolutely dripping with implied legal doom. The next morning, I woke up to find two people, same clipboard-wielding duo from the week before, standing at the edge of my lawn, squinting up at my second-story windows and murmuring. I opened the door. "Morning," I said too brightly. "Something I can help you with." They didn't answer, just turned and walked off. 10 minutes later, Karen's email hit my inbox like clockwork. "Mr. Miller, this morning's inspection revealed continued violations. Your window treatments are not in compliance with approved neutral color tones. Additionally, your landscaping appears untamed and non-conforming. If you require assistance selecting approved vendors, we are happy to provide suggestions." That was it. That was the breaking point. My goddamn curtains. I replied with a single sentence. "All future correspondence will be handled by my attorney." Then I started collecting. Every letter, every flyer, every email, digitized, time-stamped, logged. I installed 2 more security cameras, one facing the street, one facing my driveway. I backed everything up to a cloud drive and gave Terry access. If they wanted a war, I'd at least come armed. On Wednesday, it escalated again. I was working in the garage when I heard voices out front. I stepped outside and found 2 police officers talking to one of the HOA volunteers, some guy in khakis and a tucked-in polo shirt who looked like he had too many opinions about hedge trimmers. Karen stood behind them, arms crossed, watching me with a face like sour milk. One of the officers approached. "Sir, we received a report that you may be in violation of community zoning ordinances and trespassing on HOA managed property." I stared at him. "Trespassing on my own lot?" He looked mildly uncomfortable. "They claim this parcel falls under the Clearview Hills HOA jurisdiction and that you've refused to comply with lawful directives." I walked inside, grabbed the binder Terry had prepared, and handed it to him. "Here's the plat map, title record, and county zoning designations. This property is entirely outside of the HOA. There is no jurisdiction here. None." He flipped through it while Karen watched, visibly sweating. The other officer wandered over to her. "Ma'am, did you actually review these documents before making the complaint?" Karen didn't answer directly. "That house affects our community's standards. It disrupts cohesion. It damages property values." "I don't care if it disrupts your aura," I said. "You don't get to fabricate authority you don't have." The first officer handed the documents back. "Looks legit. If there's a legal dispute, it'll have to be settled in civil court. But we're not enforcing HOA rules on private non-member land." Karen's face twisted like she'd just swallowed a lemon. "You're choosing not to act." "We're choosing not to violate state property laws," the officer said calmly. "You can take it up with the county if you want, but don't use law enforcement to intimidate someone off their own lawn." They left. Karen didn't say a word. She just turned and walked away. That night, I found a dead plant jammed into my mailbox. Someone had taken the time to write "ugly" in Sharpie on one of the leaves. Classy. I snapped a photo, logged it, uploaded it to the cloud folder, and added a new label, Vandalism Week 2. We were just getting started. For a few blessed days after the police left, there was silence. No emails, no flyers, no mysterious chalk messages. I allowed myself to believe, briefly, foolishly, that maybe the cease and desist had worked. Maybe Karen was smart enough to realize she'd poked the wrong bear and was finally backing off. That fantasy lasted exactly until Thursday morning. I was sipping coffee on the porch when a neighbor I'd never spoken to, a tall woman in yoga pants and mirrored sunglasses, jogged past with her golden retriever. As she passed, she muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Some people just don't respect community values." I nearly choked on my coffee. By noon, 3 different people had walked past my driveway and stared a little too long. Not overtly hostile, not friendly either. The kind of passive-aggressive suburban surveillance you'd expect from neighbors who believe eye contact is a form of protest. That afternoon, I checked my mailbox and found a glossy postcard-sized flyer. On the front, a picture of my house, taken from the street, zoomed in. On the back, "When one neighbor refuses to cooperate, we all pay the price." Below that, a message from the Clearview Citizens Committee. I had never heard of the Clearview Citizens Committee. I Googled them. Nothing. No official website. No filings. Just a handful of social media pages. Facebook, Nextdoor, even Instagram, all created within the past week. All with a handful of followers and the same exact tone as Karen's emails. It didn't take a genius to figure it out. Karen had gone underground. HOAs weren't supposed to target non-members, but a community-led initiative full of concerned citizens. That was just free speech, right? Except it wasn't free when it came with organized intimidation. Over the next few days, the pressure escalated in ways that were subtle, plausible, and insidious. An anonymous community standards survey appeared on Nextdoor, asking if residents supported mandatory visual uniformity guidelines for all properties on Brookside Lane, regardless of formal HOA inclusion. Several neighbors reposted it, tagging me. Without tagging me, comments included gems like, "This guy moved in and suddenly my kids can't play outside without weirdos driving by. Non-compliance is contagious. If you don't want to follow the rules, move somewhere lawless." Someone even made a meme. It's an actual meme of my house next to a junkyard with the caption, "Coming soon to a neighborhood near you." It would have been funny if it wasn't so goddamn coordinated. Saturday morning, I spotted a man, mid-30s, shaved head, gym shorts, standing across the street pretending to walk his dog. He kept glancing at my driveway, phone raised like he was filming. I waved. He turned away. Dog never even peed. I was still watching from the window when I saw him meet up with a second man down the street. They fist bumped, walked back toward the cul-de-sac, and disappeared behind a white SUV. I checked the HOA roster Terry had pulled during discovery. Neither of them were listed residents. That night, I scoured the metadata on some of the Citizens Committee posts and found something interesting. 2 of the early posts originated from the same IP address Karen had used to send me her original compliance packet email. Even better, the Instagram page was registered with an email that traced back to the HOA's domain. I sent the screenshots to Terry. She called me 5 minutes later. "This is beautiful," she said. She's using a fake community group to do what the HOA legally can't. Classic strategic workaround, but illegal as hell if we prove coordination. Is this enough? It's the start. Keep logging. If we catch them directing these so-called citizens, we've got grounds for harassment, impersonation, and possibly even conspiracy to interfere with property rights. Sunday morning, I stepped outside to find a printed newsletter rolled up and banded to my front door handle. The masthead read, "The Clearview Voice, a citizen-led digest for a better community." There were articles, actual articles, headlines like, "A lawn out of sync, when 1 yard disrupts the whole street, invisible borders, real damage, the cost of non-compliance, freedom is not the same as anarchy." Page 2 had a full-color infographic comparing 2 houses side by side. Mine and Karen's. Hers looked like a home and garden showcase. Mine looked like, well, like a place someone actually lived. I'd had enough. I printed a formal statement and taped it to my front door. It read, "This property is not part of any HOA or Citizens Committee. Harassment will be reported to law enforcement. Security systems are active. All violations of privacy are being documented." I included a QR code that linked to a public Dropbox folder labeled Neighborhood Watch Evidence. Inside, every flyer, every letter, every screenshot, open access. By evening, the link had been clicked over 200 times. That same night, a package arrived on my porch. No return address. Inside was a fake eviction notice. Just a sheet of paper in bold red font. "Occupant is hereby ordered to vacate the premises due to repeated non-compliance with community mandates." Below that, "Authorized by the Clearview Citizens Committee." I didn't even flinch. I walked inside, scanned it, filed it in the Dropbox folder under a new tag. Psychological warfare. Game on. I knew it was only a matter of time before Karen changed tactics again. She had that cornered energy. The kind of person who can't stand losing control and has no off switch. Once the paper war stopped working and the fake Citizens Brigade didn't scare me off, there was only one place left for her to go. Personal. I just didn't expect it to happen in broad daylight, on my own front lawn, with a camera shoved in my face. It was Wednesday afternoon. I'd taken the day off work to deal with some long overdue repairs. An old irrigation valve had exploded underground and turned half my yard into a swamp. I was kneeling in the grass, elbow deep in wet clay, when I heard the scuff of sneakers behind me. "Hey," came a voice, young, sharp, performative. "You got a problem?" I turned, squinting into the sun. A kid, maybe 18, maybe 20, stood at the edge of my property line, hoodie pulled tight, phone in hand, recording. I didn't recognize him. Definitely not one of the neighbors. "Can I help you?" I asked, brushing mud off my arm. "You threatening me, bro?" He barked, loud and theatrical. "Is this how you treat people in this neighborhood? Just 'cause I walked past your house?" I blinked. "You walked up my driveway. It's a public sidewalk. It's my private property." He moved in closer, camera still rolling. "This guy thinks he owns the block, huh? Thinks he can assault people?" Assault? Before I could respond, he threw himself backward like I'd shoved him, even though I was a full 10 feet away, and landed hard on the lawn, groaning. Then I heard a second voice. "Got it all on video!" someone shouted. I turned and saw another man standing across the street with his phone out, angled just right. He gave the kid a thumbs up. It was staged, completely. Shamelessly staged. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just looked directly into the nearest camera and said clearly, "You're trespassing. This is being recorded." Then I walked back into the garage, calmly pulled up the security cam feed on my laptop and watched it replay. Wide angle, crystal clear, every step of the pathetic performance caught on 4 separate cameras. The kid limped off like he'd just taken a bullet in a war film. The witness followed, trying to hide his face under a baseball cap. 10 minutes later, the police showed up. Apparently, someone had called 911 to report an aggressive male homeowner attacking a pedestrian. I greeted the officers with my laptop already open and said, "Let me guess. Young guy in a hoodie, fake limp, dramatic fall. They exchanged a glance. You got that on camera? Every frame. I showed them the footage. One of the officers whistled softly. Wow, that's impressive. Do you recognize either of them? I asked. The younger officer nodded slowly. Actually, yeah. That kid's been in trouble before. Petty stuff. Trespassing. Phony insurance claims. The other guy? Can't say. I handed over a flash drive with the footage and asked if I could file a formal complaint for attempted fraud and harassment. They agreed, reluctantly, but made it clear the DA might not take it seriously without escalation. I've got weeks of escalation, I said. This is just Act 3. They left, but not before one of them said, "You might want to talk to a civil attorney about this. There's a pattern here." I already had. That night, Terry called after I sent her the footage. She sounded delighted. "This is gold," she said. "An actual provable setup. If we link this back to Karen..." "You think we can?" "Legally, not yet. But here's the interesting part. That kid, his name is Kyle Howard." I went still. Howard, Karen's nephew, lives in Tempe. No legitimate reason to be on your block unless he was invited. There it was, the connection. I added the footage to the Dropbox folder, updated the file structure, and created a new directory, staged incidents greater than physical provocation. The next morning, things got quiet again. Not in a peaceful way, more like that moment in a horror movie where the monster disappears from the hallway. Neighbors wouldn't make eye contact. Even Tom, my next-door neighbor who'd previously given me cryptic warnings, just nodded silently and retreated into his garage. Nobody waved, nobody spoke. A delivery guy actually dropped a package 6 feet from my front door like he was afraid to step closer. By Friday, flyers started reappearing. Only this time, they were more intense. Violent neighbor endangers pedestrians. Weaponized cameras are not a substitute for morality. Clearview deserves better. I found 3 stuck under my windshield, 2 taped to my garbage bins, and 1 slipped between the slats of my fence like a death threat from Martha Stewart. The Citizens Committee was back. Or maybe they'd never left. I finally called Terry and said, "I want to go on offense." There was a long pause. "Okay," she said slowly. "Then let's talk civil injunctions, restraining orders, and discovery motions." "Good," I said, "because if they want to play court, I'm done being the quiet one." I'd been pushed around enough. For weeks, I'd been playing defense, collecting evidence, documenting harassment, politely showing cops my surveillance footage like a student handing in homework. But now we were going to hit back. Properly. With paper, subpoenas, and the kind of dry legal language that made bullies sweat. Terry didn't waste time. The Monday after the staged incident, she filed a civil harassment petition against Karen personally and against the Clearview Hills HOA. Alongside it, she initiated a cease and desist demand tied to coordinated third-party defamation, naming the so-called Citizens Committee as an unregistered proxy entity acting on behalf of an HOA with no jurisdiction over my property. We included the video of Karen's nephew faking his fall, the metadata tying their social media posts back to HOA servers, the newsletters, the fake eviction notices, and the beautifully damning IP trace logs. Terry called it a symphony of malicious stupidity. A hearing date was set for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, we filed for a temporary restraining order, barring Karen and any HOA volunteer from approaching my property, contacting me directly, or distributing materials that included my name or address. The judge approved it within 48 hours. It was hand-delivered by a sheriff's deputy. According to the deputy, Karen accepted it with a tight-lipped, "This is absurd," and immediately slammed the door in his face. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe, until the silence got weird. See, when someone like Karen goes quiet, it doesn't mean she's done. It means she's regrouping, plotting, resetting her manic chessboard. And sure enough, the next phase hit like a bad punchline on Wednesday morning when I found a manila envelope shoved under my windshield wiper. Inside, a single printed sheet from the Committee for Neighborhood Stability. Another new name. Another fake group. This time, they'd included a QR code linking to a website with a long post titled "The Threat Next Door," a cautionary tale of rebellion and disrespect. Guess who the rebel was? They'd taken stills from my home security footage, granted images from outside my property, and tried to spin it as erratic behavior, hostile surveillance, and refusal to integrate. I emailed the site to Terry. She fired off a takedown request and a warning that any further content of that nature would result in an invasion of privacy lawsuit and a motion for contempt. But the most interesting part wasn't the site. It was the domain registration, hidden, of course, behind a privacy wall. But Terry had a friend, an IT specialist with a vendetta against fake shell groups. 2 hours later, we had the original registration info, registered by Marcus J. Fleming, a name we'd never seen before. But a quick search revealed that Marcus Fleming was on the contractor payroll of Clearview Hills HOA, listed as Community Outreach Consultant, which, of course, was code for hired smear artist. So now we had proof the HOA was paying people to harass me. That was the crack we needed. Terry amended our filing with the county court to include new charges: tortious interference with property use, defamation, and use of HOA funds for extrajudicial targeting of non-members. The last part? That got the attention of the county inspector. Apparently, HOAs that receive any form of funding from municipal partnerships or use county-approved contracts for landscaping or waste disposal have to comply with strict non-discrimination and jurisdictional limitation clauses. If they violated those, the county could revoke their partnership status and freeze their accounts. By Friday, an official notice was posted to the HOA's community bulletin board, pending review of external complaint. County inspector scheduled for on-site audit. I didn't put it there, but I sure as hell took a picture. The day after that, something unexpected happened. Tom, my next-door neighbor, the silent one, knocked on my door for the first time since this circus began. He looked tired, not hostile, just weary, like a man who'd been holding his breath too long. "Hey," he said, I just wanted to say I saw the flyer they put out. The threat next door thing." I nodded. "Yeah, not exactly Pulitzer-winning journalism." He hesitated. "It's not right. I think a lot of people thought you were just trying to cause trouble, but now they're seeing what Karen really is." I wasn't sure what to say to that. Tom scratched his neck. "You didn't hear this from me, but there's gonna be a board vote soon about her." He left without explaining. That night, I noticed the Citizens Committee page on Nextdoor had been taken down. The Instagram account was gone. The Facebook group rebranded itself as Clearview Community Gardening Club. No trace of the old posts, just pictures of tomato planters and suspiciously sterile flower beds. I poured a whiskey and toasted the silent purge. But I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Karen wasn't the kind of person to step away quietly. And we still had court ahead. Court day was still a week away when everything finally started to unravel. And not for me. For her. It started with a whisper. A rumor. I overheard it in line at the local grocery store, of all places. Two women, older cardigans over workout gear, were talking by the frozen peas like a pair of Suburban intelligence agents. I heard she used HOA funds to hire her nephew. Isn't that illegal? Oh, sweetie, most of what she does is illegal. They never said her name. They didn't need to. That same afternoon, someone slid a folded envelope under my door. No return address. Inside was a single printed page. "You don't know me, but I've been on the board for 6 years. I didn't know the extent of what Karen was doing. She lied to us, manipulated people, misused HOA funds, and is dragging this community into a lawsuit we never approved. I'm sorry. I voted for the emergency meeting. You didn't deserve this." No name, no signature, but I knew what it meant. HOA mutiny. And the next day, it went public. Someone, probably the same anonymous board member, leaked internal HOA emails to a local community watchdog blog. I didn't even know we had one. But overnight, the headline was everywhere in our neighborhood Facebook groups. Clearview Hills HOA president accused of misappropriation, targeted harassment campaigns. The article included redacted emails from Karen directing Marcus Fleming to coordinate pressure efforts against the rogue occupant of Brookside Lane, references to managing perception, and even instructions to utilize neighborhood contacts to document daily violations. In black and white. The post went viral. Well, viral for suburbia. It got over 1,000 shares across various Nextdoor groups in less than 12 hours. Comments flooded in. People were pissed. Some neighbors apologized publicly. Others claimed ignorance. A few doubled down, defending her like she was a cult leader. But the tide had turned. Karen had lost the room. By Tuesday, an emergency HOA board meeting was announced, open to the public. Held in the community center that looked like it had been stolen from a model town set. I wasn't planning to go. But Terry insisted, if they try to spin this, you need to be there. Calm, composed, documented, trust me. So I went. The place was packed, every plastic chair filled, people standing along the back wall. The air was stiff with sweat and sunscreen and righteous fury. Up front sat the board members, visibly uncomfortable. And in the middle, flanked by a stack of binders and a pitcher of lemon water, sat Karen, still composed, still perfectly groomed, wearing a blazer like she was running for Congress. The meeting opened with the usual nonsense: minutes, attendance, legal disclaimers. Then the board chair, a nervous woman named Denise, took the mic. We are convened here today to address recent concerns regarding board conduct, particularly regarding actions taken by President Karen Howard. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen stood, took the mic like she was about to give a TED Talk. Let me be very clear, she began, her voice calm but firm. Everything I've done has been in the best interest of this community. We are facing a threat, not just from declining standards, but from a precedent that says anyone can move into our neighborhood and ignore what we've worked hard to preserve. People shifted uncomfortably. She scanned the room. This individual has weaponized social media, distorted the truth, and involved outsiders in what should be a local matter. If we allow this kind of behavior to continue, we lose what makes Clearview special. I stood up. Not to interrupt, just to be visible. Calm. No theatrics, just standing in the middle of the room with every eye on me. Karen faltered. Just a flicker. But it was there. Denise cleared her throat. Karen, the issue is not about standards. It's about actions. Unauthorized spending, directing third parties to harass a resident, misrepresenting HOA jurisdiction. Those are serious accusations. Karen didn't blink. We were protecting our values. Another board member, older man, thick glasses, spoke up. We didn't authorize a harassment campaign. We didn't vote on legal threats. You acted alone. Karen turned to him. I acted because no one else had the spine to. You all sat on your hands while this outsider laughed in our faces. The room exploded. Shouts, arguments, accusations. It was no longer HOA business. It was tribal warfare. I stayed silent, just watching, memorizing faces. Eventually, someone banged a gavel like we were in a courtroom. The board chair raised her voice. This meeting is not for public spectacle. We have received formal legal notices regarding this issue. Pending court results, we will be appointing an interim president. A vote will follow next month. Karen's face, stone. I locked eyes with her across the room. She didn't look angry. She looked like someone who'd just realized her army was gone. And I realized then, she hadn't just lost control. She'd lost her identity. For people like Karen, power isn't a tool. It's who they are. Strip it away, and all that's left is static. I walked out of the meeting into the muggy night, air humming with tension, voices behind me still raised in debate. But I didn't care anymore. I knew where we were heading. And for the first time since this all began, I was actually looking forward to court. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. It wasn't one of those grand, high-ceiling chambers you see on TV, just a rectangular room with beige walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and cheap plastic chairs. The kind of place where traffic tickets get sorted and restraining orders get handed out by the dozen. But on that morning, it felt like the center of the universe. Karen sat across the aisle wearing the same blazer from the HOA meeting. Her hair was perfect. Her expression wasn't. She looked diminished, like someone who hadn't slept. Her posture stiff, arms crossed tightly, like she could hold the whole situation together with her elbows. No one from the board sat with her. She was alone. Terry was calm as ever, organized, methodical. She'd already filed every motion, every exhibit, every backup document 3 times over. She called it a procedural carpet bomb. The judge, mid-60s, weary but sharp, started things by asking if this case was truly necessary. This appears to be a property boundary matter, he said. Why is it in harassment court? Terry smiled faintly. Because it stopped being about boundaries 3 months ago, Your Honor. This is a case of coordinated sustained harassment using the false pretense of authority. We laid it out piece by piece. The false compliance packets, the Citizens Committee and the IP logs, the staged fall, the QR codes and smear sites, the paid outreach consultant secretly acting as Karen's attack dog. Every image, every email, every policy she quoted that had no legal weight. The moment that seemed to stick with the judge was the footage of Karen's nephew throwing himself backward on my lawn, paired with HOA invoices showing a payment to Marcus Fleming dated 3 days before. Karen's defense attorney tried to argue it was community engagement, gone too far. He even implied I was antagonistic toward neighborhood cohesion. Terry leaned forward and said flatly, "The defendant invented a private authority where none existed and weaponized it against a legal property owner. This isn't about aesthetics. It's about control through intimidation." The judge didn't rule that day. He said he wanted time to review the files due to the pattern of escalation and apparent impersonation of lawful entities. But he granted the restraining order extension and issued a public warning: any further communication or coordination against me by the HOA or its representatives would result in direct sanctions. That was enough for me. I walked out of the courthouse into the dry Arizona sun and just stood there, letting it hit my face. It was over. Not officially, not stamped in triplicate yet, but the machine had stopped grinding. Karen didn't look at me as she left the building. Her attorney trailed behind, talking, but she didn't respond. She didn't speak to anyone. 2 weeks later, I heard from Tom again. "Board voted her out," he said. "Clean sweep. They're reorganizing everything, pulling back the overreach. You probably saved us from a lawsuit, too." I just nodded. The Citizens Committee pages disappeared for good. The gardening club quietly rebranded as an actual gardening club. Marcus Fleming stopped appearing on vendor lists. Karen sold her house within the month. The new board president came by one evening with a bottle of wine and a polite apology. I accepted it. I didn't need groveling, just peace. One night in early fall, I stood on my porch with a beer in one hand and watched a group of kids ride scooters down the street. No one avoided my driveway. No one whispered. A breeze came in, cool and sharp, carrying the first chill of winter. I thought about the day I moved in, the clipboard, the fake violations, the chalk on the pavement. And I thought about how a single person's obsession with control almost hijacked an entire neighborhood, almost made me doubt my place in a home I'd fought to own. But now it was just a quiet street, and my house was finally just mine.